جميع منكم محاضرة من هذا الليل الإدارة العنوان حوكمة المعلومات وفيها دكتور الحقباني حاصل على درجة التدريس مع مدرسة الشرق في تخصص هندسة الحاسب الآلي في عام 2000 درجة الماجستير في تخصص الحاسب ودرجة الدكتوراه في علم المعلومات في جامعة الصعيد عن الدكتور الحقباني يشرح حاليا منصب مدير عام لخدمات أمن المعلومات في جامعة الملك سعود عبد العزيز الدولي ويقوم بدور استشراف أمن المعلومات في الشؤون الصحية والحرس الوطني وبالإضافة إلى ذلك هو أستاذ مساعد في كلية الصحة العامة والصحة العامة والوظيفية ومؤسس مشارك للعلاج والتدريب الصومي للأمراض الصحية وقد تم انتخاب رئيس الجمعية السعودية للمديرية الصحية والوظيفية والجامعة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Before I start, I would like to thank the Saudi Association of Teachers for the invitation to be with you guys and to talk about one of the interesting topics, that is data governance. So what are we going to cover today? We're going to take you first to the value of data, just to understand the value of data. Then we'll talk about the data management issues, and then try to define the data governance. And then we'll try to make the correlations between the data governance and related frameworks. And then we'll talk about big data and analytics, and talk about the critical success factors that will impact the data governance of the institution. So, why we are talking about data governance today? If you look to the data, actually, it's the valuable assets that any organization these days have. Unfortunately, if you look to the organization, they don't consider the data as an asset. They always look to the physical assets or physical things as an asset. They try to protect, retain, and manage. But with the data, they don't do that. And we've been hearing a lot that data is an enterprise asset, but unfortunately, we don't see any practice from the organization to really manage that asset. As you know, data is the breed. It's if the breed is called applications. You can't have applications without having data. And you can't have any applications or building anything on top of the applications like giving information or leading you to the knowledge without having data at the first place. So data is stored and managed by infrastructure, by taking it or entering it through applications, storing it in some sort of hardware. So as I just mentioned, tangible organization assets is the one, or are the one, that is taking the organization attention. If you take, for example, PCs, printers, you're going to find that this printer has a tag. And there is an asset management system that has information about that device, and who is using that device, and how long this device was in place. So all this information has been kept about the physical asset. But when it comes to the information, we build application all on the way, but we don't keep track of our data. We end up having redundant data. We end up having data that is entered incompletely to the natural application. Okay. So if you want to use this data, and you have multiple versions of data, which one are you going to use? You need to have a single source, or a single source of truth to your data. So why we are bothering and building applications, and each application entering the same data? Why not to look at our data that we have, our, let's say, dictionary, our data architecture, which shows us where is the data that I needed for my application, and I don't need to bother our vocabulary on that. That will help us to have a single source of data, and we can then assess the quality of that data. Right now, we have different versions. Which one are you going to access? That's the problem. So why did it not be taken the attention? Because it's intangible. I don't see it. Okay? Like the information security. People, they leave the information security at the end because it's not functionally part. It's intangible. It's simply for data. So in order for the organizations to look and consider this data, you need to put what? Value for data. If you put value for data, based on the value data of the data, you're going to see how much of efforts that you need to put on that data. So information is indeed a high value asset of enterprise. Nowadays, if you want to build business strategy, how are we going to build it? You're going to rely on some information. How are we going to get this information? From the data that you have. Based on this data and information, these things might change the way that you're going to plan or put your strategy. All the decision makers, they need what? Information. For what? To create decisions. Without having information that would be generated from data, let's say high quality data, that's might impact your decisions. So, what do you do when you have something bad or value? You would like to retain it, protect it, and then manage it. So this is what we would like to do for our data. So if you look to the engineering model, we start by having data, which is kind of facts. Data that will be generated from transactional systems. Okay? When you put this data into a context, you bring this data and make a context that will make information. So information with sort of data that might create an output. With this one, you will be able to make, to some extent, a correct decision. So data is the representation of facts like this, number, graphics. And nowadays, data is coming from many sources and is growing and بشكل really scale to some extent that you can't even be able to manage these days. So it's the raw material. It's the raw material that you produce information on. The information is, it's actually data in context. That's it. You take all the data part in your context, that will make or produce the information. Without that context, the data is meaningless. When you look to the knowledge is information in perspective, integrated into viewpoint based on interpretation patterns. So that's it. So you take the information, it's actually the information. You might use some of the data to create that viewpoint. But indeed, it's information perspective. So knowledge is about understanding the significance of information. You will get information, but you will create some knowledge out of that information, some viewpoint. And that might lead to have an effective action. So let's look at, we just elaborate now the data and information and knowledge. Now let's look at the data management issues. Three. There is an issue of discovery, integration, insight, dissemination, management, quality, and security. So what are the issues? You tackle the discovery. I cannot find the right information. Nowadays, go to any organization and ask for specific information what the analyst or the CIO is going to say. Let me think. I think this information is with the RD department. No, it's with maybe the integration department, maybe academic, maybe health informatics, etc. So there is no such a reference that they can find with the information. Integration cannot manipulate the final information. What is the common problem that most of the organization is suffering from? When the ICT wave started, each functional department, they were thinking in isolation. I want to build my own system. I have my functions. So I have my system X, and that department will need Y and Z, etc. And at that time, they said, we didn't need any information from others. That's sufficient. Later on, they are going to start thinking, well, I would like to have a holistic view of what's going on. I don't need to know what is in that department, but I need to correlate the information from this this department with the other department to create something that might drive or change some people's mind. Could be strategic objectives within my strategy, for example, is a strategy. That's the mandate for integration. So people thought that integration is something simple. Is bring an integration engine and we are done. It's not that easy. When they build the integration engine, they end up having, well, we have many sources of data. Which one are we going to take? Which one are we going to consider? I didn't have any evidence. So that's one of the problems, integration. And I would say most of the organizations are suffering from the data integration. Insight cannot extract value and knowledge from information. I didn't know what I have actually. So how can I really extract or get value? Quality of the data is maintained. We don't know. Maybe something like that system that's been built by that department, they are, let's say, employing some sort of quality control, or the other departments are doing. So, quality varies. Dissemination. How can I disseminate information? I am seeing silos of systems, silos of data stores. How can I disseminate it? And under what kind of assurance, or security assurance, or information security assurance I can look? I want to disseminate the data to authorized people, legible people. That's what issue as well. Management cannot manage and control information volumes and all. This is what is government nowadays. We built our infrastructure with estimation of size of the data. And nowadays, the data is almost tripled every year. So whatever system that they built was capable to handle that amount of data. But with the growth that I'm seeing in the data, I cannot anymore handle or manage this data. Data that's created, types of data that's entered in my organization from the public. So it's not anymore my internal data. Even I'm getting some external data, using it for creating